Awesome. Well, welcome to Unpack Lunch. Hopefully you are with us, you are tuning in live. Great that you can be with us this afternoon. If you're tuning in later in the day or maybe another day, so good that you can be part of this. It's just an opportunity for us to dig into the teaching that we hear about on Sundays, maybe a chance to ask kind of further questions, or maybe to just share some comments about kind of what we enjoyed or what we found interesting about what happened on Sunday. So my name is Finn. If we haven't met before, it's really great that you can be here. If you've got any questions, we are streaming live onto Facebook. So if you are watching this on Facebook and you would like to drop a question, maybe kind of let us know you're watching, say hi. We would love to interact with you. And if possible, I'll try and give your questions to Steve. Steve, are you there? Do you want to join us if you are available?
I am.
Here he comes. So Steve spoke on Sunday, so I'm going to be asking him a few questions, just some thoughts or questions that either we had on the day or that I thought of in the meantime, or that I personally had. So I'm going to ask Steve about that. Hi, here he is.
Yes. Hi, Finn.
Really great that you could be with me, Steve. I've got a few questions based on Sunday. Thanks so much, first of all, because I just thought it was a great Sunday. I was tuning in from home, got to kind of watch along with everyone else, and just really enjoyed it, and just thought shared some really good thoughts. So first of all, so if you're watching live, if you're on Facebook, do say hi to us. It'd be great to know who's watching and who's been part of this, and by all means drop questions and thoughts and comments in, and I'll put them to Steve. Steve, I want to start off you in the chat. I was enjoying reading the chat. So on Sunday we were talking about you won't have bad days. We're doing this series called Things Jesus Never Said. We're kind of trying to look into these statements which for some reason or another we've come to believe are truths about faith, a truth about who Jesus was, and the reality is he didn't say them. And we're going to come on to this whole idea of that Jesus never said you won't have bad days. But one of the questions we were asking people on Sunday was, what cheers you up? What's a guaranteed pick me up? When you've had a bad day. And you mentioned in the chat that a glass of Lagavulin is your kind of go-to. That will always cheer you up after a bad day. Speak to us a bit about that. Whiskey's your typical choice, but also kind of what other things kind of pick you up when you've had a bad day? Because we all have them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, a little glass of Lagavulin is definitely one of mine, and I have to thank Mr. Jonathan Land for that. He was the person who first introduced me to whiskey years and years ago, and so I started on the heavy stuff. I started on the really thick, kind of peaty, smoky whiskies, and so I've kind of always liked them ever since, really. So thank you, John, if you're watching. Very grateful to you. I think other pick-me-ups is basically, I think it's anything that kind of takes my mind off what's happened. So sometimes it will be going for a walk with Sarah, and it just gives us a chance to talk about stuff, unless Sarah is the one that's caused the bad day.
Yes. Yeah, good point.
But I mean, otherwise, my switch off would just be watching TV, watching old comedies, anything which I don't have to concentrate hard on, I think, but I can, in a sense, lose myself with. So that would be one of the key ways for me. So I can often, after a long day, or it's been a hard day, I would often watch telly going into the night, just to kind of unwind and try and switch off.
Absolutely. Good shout. I'd agree. I think, sometimes just taking that breather and kind of getting away from it all is a great thing. So I had a few questions kind of around Sunday and kind of what you shared on Sunday, and I'd love to kind of put them to you if that's okay. And so off the bat straight away, so when you spoke on Sunday, there was a line I loved where you said, our troubles prove our faith, and you referenced that verse in John, I believe, where you were talking about that, and that's all well and good, and you kind of unpick that and unpack that, a bit further in that talk. And so if people do want to catch up on that, it is available online, and so I would suggest doing that. But I was kind of curious, so what would you say to someone who doesn't have a faith but is going through those tough times?
Yeah, sure. I think I wouldn't say very much to start with, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think a really key thing is to be able just to listen and to try and understand what's happening and understand why they're what it is that they're kind of going through. And then I think it's the case of really wanting to find ways to support. Because often it's not our words, it's our actions which speak louder. And
Yeah.
so Sarah, my wife, she is just brilliant at getting alongside people who are suffering, and she's not there to be giving them the gospel or anything like that. Although she is living out the good news with them.
Yeah.
In other words, she just says, "I just want to be like God to them." And so she'll draw alongside and talk. And I think that's my experience. Whenever people have gone through bereavement, or they suddenly hit the cancer issue, or whatever, I think nearly always, or even marriage breakups and those kind of things, it's just being able to sit and to cry with people. Because it's that whole identifying. But I think part of it is I also want to be able to identify with their pain without the conversation then being about me. I think it's really
hard, isn't it?
to try and identify and then actually turn the whole conversation so it's about me, and I don't want to do that. But I think it is about sharing stories, and it's about sharing experiences, and everyone has bad days. Every person of faith has bad days, and and so therefore we have a story to tell about what our experience of God is through that. And I think that's really powerful to be able to do, for them to know that we identify with them, and secondly to be able to share some of what we have learnt through those experiences. And I have to say that God plays such a huge part of my life, that of course he influences and shapes how I've got through those difficult times. And so I think sharing those stories is in a sense an easy way to be able to do that, because I can speak of his strength, of his grace, of his compassion, of his presence, of his understanding, all of those things. So I think it's not the first thing I would talk about, but it's something that would be leading towards that, really.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, powerful. So you kind of started to touch on it there. So I'll just kind of push that a bit further, which is during the service, just had an amazing story from Becky, Jack, and just the journey that they've been on as a family over the last little while. And she's just, man, it was just a story of trusting God. Despite huge loss, despite uncertainty and grief, and what she spoke about was the fact that she just had such a sense that Jesus was with them, with her, in that time, and still kind of alongside them in that. Is that something you've personally encountered? Is that something you can speak into or empathize with, where as you said, where you're kind of sharing, when you're speaking to other people, sometimes you'll share your own experience. Is that, would there be parallels there?
Oh, absolutely, there are parallels, but it's not necessarily the same. So are there times when I've gone through hard times when I've really known God's presence? Absolutely. Are there times when I've faced really difficulties and I've wondered where God is? Absolutely. So it's not one or the other, it's both.
Yeah.
And so I would say that at times God has felt both distant and he's felt really, really close. And so, but what I have to remind myself is that my faith isn't based on my feelings. It just isn't. It's based on some facts, and it's based on the truth of what God has said. So, so in a way, I think Becky was doing that too. Still in her grief and in her pain, it was almost like she was declaring stuff that she believed, even if it didn't always feel like it. And if you talk with Becky, I've had such a privilege to be able to meet up with her on so many occasions, and sit and cried with her and listened and all of that. And does God always feel close to her? No, he won't. He won't, because pain shouts too loudly. But does she know it's true? Yes, she does. And so she chooses to speak those things out as a reminder. And I've had to do the same too. we often like to talk about, you know, that as people, we're made up of body, of mind, of soul, and of spirit. And it's almost as if we like to try and separate those things. So our body and our minds can be all over the place, but our soul and our spirit is absolutely fine. It's all entwined. It's all entangled with each other. And so, you know, if I'm suffering physically, that will affect my relationship with God.
Of course, yeah.
It just does. And so I think, you know, the amazing thing that Becky was able to do, and in a sense I've been able to do in the past too, is to declare who God is and what he's doing and what I know of him. But the downside of that is that some people will then think, blimey, I can't live up to that. I'm not living up to it. I'm just declaring what I know to be true. And but that's part of the process that we have to, in a sense, holding on to our faith through those difficult times, even when God seems really distant. It's still to be able to hold on to those. Otherwise, the voice of God is absent, that he's given up on us, that God is angry, that he's just really disappointed, and so we're just getting the punishment that we deserve, or God's apathetic, that he doesn't care. And I don't think God is any of those when we experience those pains, but they're the voices that jump out very, very loudly unless we hold on to the truth. So yes, there are times when I've known God's incredible presence during those hard times, and other times when honestly I've wondered where he is. And I haven't been able to talk with him. I haven't been able to read, can't concentrate, all of that. And that's when you need other people around. People around to help bring perspective and to remind us of the truth. And Becky has those people. And I've been so fortunate in my life that I've had those people who can still not speak glib answers, but speak truth into my situation.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. And just like the power of having that community around you, and you know, that's a huge part of what church is, isn't it? In terms of getting those right people around that can I guess kind of guide you back onto the right path when you kind of start to stray. I guess it's maybe an analogy or way of putting it, but yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. That's
but I think also our emotions go all over the place, and so there'll be one time when you say, well, I've stopped believing in God now, and then a few minutes later you'll be talking to him.
Absolutely.
I tend to fear less now when I hear people. I'll have conversations with people and they say, "Oh, I've just given up on God because I've prayed and he hasn't answered." And I don't panic. I used to panic thinking, "Oh no, they're losing their faith. This is awful." And actually, it's part of the faith journey. It's of working our way through those. It's been known as the dark night of the soul. When it is really dark and we don't know where God is, and it's still being able to trust through those times. It's very powerful. We don't ever choose it, but that's the verses in James when he talks about persevering, because that's what matures our faith. And any Christian that you really like and you think they are awesome, they will have been through hard times and their faith will have been matured because of it.
So true. That's so good. Yeah, I think there's definitely a level of that, isn't it, where we will look at certain heroes of faith, both living and, you know, in from the past, and be like, oh, you know, to have faith like that. And actually what kind of tends to, as you say, come with that is actually just a hardship and pain that has refined, matured, and extended their faith beyond kind of which I think you summed up really well on Sunday, in terms of like I'm not going to do it justice now, but like the calm areas of life are not the areas where we're growing. Calm seas never made a sailor, or something like that.
It was something like that, yeah.
it was something like that. Great. So what you spoke about was just that those times kind of refine our faith, and they prove our faith. They prove that we are trusting in Jesus. And that's great, but it's also hard. And like you say, there's times where it's just like you're probably either, you know, apathetic and just like, what's the point, or you're you know, just resigned to, I'm too far gone, or this situation is too it's engulfed my life too much. And so what can we do? What practical steps can we all take? Anyone watching this, whether they're going through bad times or having a bad day today, or actually this is just like, do you know what, right now life's okay. Like, what could we be doing? What practical steps can we take to ensure that we're building a solid foundation, that we are trusting in Jesus rather than in our circumstances.
Yeah, certainly. I think if we're not going through it at the moment, preparation is fantastic. So there are some practical things to do, because Jesus said, in this world we will have trouble, but take heart. And so if we're not experiencing now, we are going to. And that's a horrible thought. I remember I was at an evangelist conference once back in the early 90s, and someone was talking about this, and I just thought, I haven't really faced anything difficult, not really difficult in life, and I was kind of wondering what that would be and whether I would. And yeah, and it came, and it does, because it comes to all of us. And so to prepare is really important. I've discovered that you really only know whether you're trusting Jesus rather than good times by going through those. I remember a guy called Steve Chalk once said that you'll never really know whether Jesus is Lord of your life until you want to do one thing, he wants you to do something else, and you choose to do what he wants. That's when you know that he's Lord. How do you know whether your faith is genuine, whether it's really in Jesus? Well, it's when you go through those hard times and you come out the other side and you're still trusting, you know that your faith is genuine. You're not trusting in good times, you're trusting in Jesus no matter. So I think the preparation that we can do is to know the truth, know the truth.
Okay,
I've met so many people who would say, well, I believe in Jesus, I trust in Jesus, but I don't ever read the Bible, and I don't, you know what I mean? I just listen to books and that kind of stuff. That's okay to a point, but we have to own what it is that Jesus says, what it is that God says through his word. And so therefore, I think it's really important to know the truth, to look and to remind ourselves of what it is that God says, because our circumstances will change, but God doesn't, and God's truth doesn't change either. So I think that one of the practical things is to do that. It's to get to know the truth. Because Jesus said the truth will set you free, which means he'll set us free through those troubled times, that it's the truth that we can really hold on to. I think the other thing which I've found just utterly vital in my own experience is to surround ourselves with wise people. When you go through hard times, it's fine having people saying, I'm really sorry, that must be really hard, but that's fine. But what you want is for people to be able to, again, speak truth, to remind ourselves of the truth, and for us to be open and accountable to people. In other words, we can invite people to question and to ask the hard questions at times. And so for me, over the last number of years, Chris Cobbold has been one of those people who asks awkward questions and really delves, because he wants the best for me. And and actually I like him doing, well, I don't always like him doing it, but I need him to do that. And so I have to have people in my life to do just that, to question me, so that when hard times come, I have done some preparation for it. And it's that preparation of knowing the truth and having those relationships that will see me through those hard times out the other side until the next lot of hard times come.
It's good. It's so true. And similarly, you kind of love/hate those sort of questions, don't you? Where it's like you've made me think about this, and I'm gonna have to get to an answer in myself now. But it's all good stuff, isn't it? So love that. So on Sunday, during the service, we had a question from Ruth, who asked, I just thought it was great. She said, can you be anxious but still trust? What are your thoughts on that? Nice and easy one.
Great news that yes, you can. You can be anxious and you can still trust. Absolutely. They are not mutually exclusive in any way, just as you can doubt and still trust. Of course we can do. In a sense, the same way as, can you be angry with your spouse and still love them? Well, yeah, of course you can do. The anger is, in a sense, it's a temporary, it's a momentary thing where something has happened, but love is this much deeper level, and I think that's what trust is. Trust is this much deeper level that we can have, so that when the questions start coming, when things are not working out as we want, of course all of those emotions will come up, but there is this deeper level of trust that still runs underneath. So yeah, I just think that is so clearly illustrated again with the disciples. You know, they were following Jesus, they were with Jesus, they were seeing the miracles, and when the storm hit the boat and they thought they were going to drown, you know, where was their trust then? And Jesus said to them, you know, where's your faith? And he calms the storm, and then they're even more afraid of him because he calmed the storm.
Yeah. Who is this guy?
I know. So, so you've got these guys who become the leaders of the church that you know we are part of today, and it's on their shoulders that the church has been built. They are people who struggled with doubt and with anxiety and fear all the time, and yet somehow that deep trust still kept flooding through them, and so. It's almost as if they have various levels that they get through for that trust to get deeper and deeper. And I think that's true for us too. You know, for what I was anxious about when I was 5, you know, my shoelaces were undone.
Yeah.
You know, that was a biggie.
Yeah.
I haven't worried about that for years, and I don't need to. But there are other things, bigger things, which have come in. And in a sense, so we learn as we go along, and we learn what a deeper level of trust is. So do I still get anxious? Of course I do. Do I still panic? Yeah, I do at times. Do I still doubt? Less often. Less often.
Okay.
I have
Interesting,
to say. But I can allow anxieties to overwhelm me and overwhelm my thinking and not be able to pray and all of that. And again, that's where I need other people to still speak into my life. And I'm surrounded by awesome people. So I'm really grateful for that. So yeah, you can be anxious, and yes, you can still trust. I think with all of these things, if we allow anxiety to take over so that we go with what we feel rather than what we know is true, that will always lead us in a difficult place. Always will. The same way with doubts. If we go with our doubts, rather than accepting that we have doubts, but if we go with them and say, well, I doubt whether there's a God, so there can't be a God, so I'm not going to, then that takes us down a route which never leads us anywhere good. Yeah. So acknowledge those emotions and those feelings, but still hold on to the truth.
Yeah, I think I think what you're saying is so true. It's that letting go of the my side bias thing, isn't it? It's the not holding on to. It's releasing control, which is hard to do. But I actually think, you know, coming from a position of anxiety or doubt is actually a relatively, you know, that feels like a place where you can trust God, because it's like, well, what else can you do? If you're feeling anxious, like, where else can you turn? Do you know what I mean? And so it's actually, I guess, maybe even harder if it's more of a place of, I don't know, pride or something, you know, where you're so assured in yourself and my way is the right way. And exactly like you said, you know, that's when it, you know, faith comes to the surface and, you know, push comes to shove, as it were, where it's like, you know, if I say I've got a faith, but then I get to a point where it's a crossroads where it's like, I've got my way of how I want to do it and how God wants to do it, and I choose my way, then it's like, well, am I really trusting in that moment? Exactly. So yeah, no, I think that's great. I've had one question I've just spotted on Facebook, and I'll see if there's, Ruth joined, so we've answered your question, Ruth. That's all I need to know. If you saw it, great. If you didn't, catch up later. So I had a question around, so obviously at the moment we're talking about bad days, singular, or maybe slightly a few, but like obviously at the moment the world is having a bad day on many levels. Only 2 minutes of the news to kind of get your head around that one. But I think Darren has asked about kind of the impact of coronavirus and just kind of our world in lockdown, and that's a heck of a bad day. How can we trust God in times such as this? And it might kind of be similar things to what you've already said, and I appreciate that. But I guess also part of his question is like, how do you think God might be able to use this time for something positive? If you know, you might have to get your crystal ball out on this one, but you know, if God works all things for his good, like this doesn't feel like a good time. Do you know what I mean? And this doesn't feel like you know, we're flourishing as a human race. So any thoughts on that? How can we have hope? How can we have peace? How can we trust in times such as this?
Yeah, I think we're part of a world which has broken, and that we live the stains of that brokenness. And I think the virus is, in a sense, just another evidence of that it's not working as deep down all of us know that it should. And I don't for one moment think that it's God who has set out this virus to cause the devastation and stuff. It's part of what goes on in a broken world. These kind of events happen. And so where is God in it? So why doesn't God stop it? Why doesn't he just sort it? And there are times where God has, and there are other times when God hasn't, which is exactly the same as when I have a bad day. God, why don't you come and sort it for me? Well, I've seen miracles where he has, and more often than not, he hasn't, because there's something else at work that he can do. And can God work in this situation? Absolutely, he can. How many of us know our neighbours better than we've ever known them before?
Yes, true. It's good.
That's remarkable. And it's all because of a virus. How many people have had to learn to slow down when their life has been at such a manic pace? And how many families have had time together when normally they would hardly see each other? Those kind of things are ways in which God works, where people who have been so fretful and worried in these situations, and they have suddenly looked outside of themselves and outside of their situations and say, is there a God? God, can you do anything in this? And for people coming to faith, for people turning to God in prayer, those are the kinds of things where that God is almost saying, there is this stuff which is going on, but I can still work in it. And I can still draw people to me, and you can still discover love and peace and hope despite the circumstances. So I don't think God's inactive in any way. I don't think he's passive within this situation. I think he's doing remarkable things in and through the situation, but I don't think he's caused it. I think the cause of it still comes down to that's what having bad days in our world can be like.
Absolutely.
Yes. So we live with that.
Yeah. Oh, great answer. Love that. Cool. I think that's all the questions I've got. That's all the questions I've got online. I'm just going to do a quick double check. But yeah, no, it's been great. It's been really helpful to unpack some of that. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this Sunday. We conclude this series. And yeah.
You do what you deserve.
That's the one. Yeah.
That's the one.
So yeah, if you have enjoyed this conversation, if you are wanting to know more, first of all, by all means, get in touch. The comment section, if you're looking at this on Facebook, the comment section is open, and you can still drop comments in there, and we will try to get back to you as soon as possible on that. You can also email info@forgechurch.com if you have any questions. But hey, I would love to invite you. Why not tune in on Sunday for the next part of Things Jesus Never Said? And we're looking at one thing that Jesus never said, which is you will always get what you deserve. Great topic. Yeah, really excited to see what Johnny picks out of that. So yeah, join us then, and if not, we'll see you next week for the next part of Unpacked Lunch. See you very soon. Thank you.